Well, good morning, everybody. What a shock at the weekend, eh? Green Bay Packers losing at home to the 49ers. Anyway, well done, 49ers, and hopefully you will go on and be successful and make it all the way to the Super Bowl and win. And then it will make the victory at Lambeau Field worthwhile. So last week, posted a video where I talked a little bit about the charitable Dr. John Sharp back in the 1700s, which is, of course, I've been looking into recently the Enlightenment movement in the UK, Scotland in particular, in the 1700s. And hopefully going to be doing a video with Dr. Alex Fotheringham soon about it. And as I say, this watching the program about the villages by the sea, about Bamborough, was really nice. Having read this particular article by, don't know if I'll get the pronunciation right, but Umar Haig. I've read other articles by him, very, very interesting, somewhat disturbing. Anyway, let me share that with you. Even the title of the article: why is America the only country in the world with regular school shootings? Something has gone badly wrong for America's kids, and shootings are just a symptom of it. Some of the things that he raises, very, very interesting. Why is it that America's the only country in the world, which has the gruesome occurrence of regular school shootings? It's not just about the shootings, as American media often makes it out to be. To be the only country in the world with such a serious social pathology is an indication of something deeper. The shootings at school are a symptom of sickness in society at large. What sickness is that? How does it produce school shootings? Let's begin with where the shootings take place. High schools, mostly, and some middle schools. What's special, different about those places, especially compared to the rest of the world? That's a question that Americans don't ask, but they should, because the fact is that high school in America is especially terrible compared to almost anywhere else. Let me try and explain, and this might be a little hard for Americans to grasp, because most of them have never lived anywhere, let alone gone to school anywhere else. High school and middle school in America are terrible. They are brutal and violent and barbaric and backwards to a degree that isn't tolerated almost anywhere else, even in plenty of poor countries. In American high schools, bullying and beatings and harassment are such common occurrences that they're not even regarded as such a thing. What would count as bullying and intimidation and abuse in, say, Canada or Europe or Asia and Africa is not even seen as bullying and intimidation. It's just seen as kids being kids. Everyday insults, casual degradation, the way that American kids look down on each other. It isn't normal. And in the rest of the world, what's normal for America's kids is considered deeply abnormal for kids. Aggression, hostility, selfishness, bullying, forms of violence and abuse. Now, I said that might be hard for Americans to understand, so let me give you an example. When I was in high school in America, it was perfectly okay for me to be called all kinds of racist slurs and to be beaten within an inch of my life every single day. It was my problem, in the sense that I was the problem. Now, this isn't about me. Rather, it's about the institutional response to that. Teachers and coaches egged it on, laughing. Principals and administrators looked the other way. Not a single adult cared in any way whatsoever. In fact, they encouraged it. Now, I have a reference point. I went to school all over the world. It was never like this anywhere but America. It was bizarre, weird, singular. That was when I learned that being a kid in America was different, way, way different. What is it like being a kid in America? It sucks. It is terrible to grow up in America. I really mean that. I want to say it because I grew up all over the world, and growing up in America was something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy today. School shootings. They're not just about the guns. You can buy a rocket launcher at a street market in Pakistan or Iran, but students aren't blowing up schools there. Something much, much more sinister is going on here. What is that something? Kids are little people. They live in the little worlds adults make for them. We call those worlds schools. Those little worlds mirror the big worlds of adults, and the big worlds adults have made in America. It's incredibly ugly, violent, adversarial, brutal. Lose your job, die. Why would you expect the little worlds American kids grow up in, which are there to prepare them for the big one, to be any different? They're not. Just like America is a weirdly backwards, violent, brutal, ugly society, so is growing up in America, going to school in America, being a kid in America. It's terrible to be a kid in America. Probably more so, kids are the one of the groups bearing the brunt of American collapse. At school, especially high school, American kids are socialized, prepared to accept roles and norms and values that simply don't really exist elsewhere. It's not their fault. How could it be? Now I'm going to try to explain this, and it's a subtle concept that's going to be hard for Americans to grasp. I was far from the only one. Any kid who didn't fit in, they were abused, usually violently, and made examples of. There was a poor kid named Steve who was beaten in the hallways every single day, a ritual event. I went to rich school in an affluent neighborhood full of putative liberals, America's good people. Nobody cared. Steve, he went nuts. He literally was driven out of his mind by the beatings. Now, I'm not saying that bullying produces school shooters, and that's okay. Sorry, wrong. I am beginning to try to say something very, very different. The way that American kids interact at school is deeply, profoundly abnormal, really, really unhealthy. Almost every single interaction is a form of hostility and aggression, of contempt and one-upmanship. There is, in other words, a culture that is bred and reinforced by things much bigger than kids, institutions, systems, and authority figures. Kids are not allowed to be just kids in America. What are they doing at school? Well, they're not studying or learning very much. You only have to look at America's dismal rankings in international education to know that much. They are being trained to be little consumers and producers. So American high school is about fitting in. It's about wearing the right clothes, speaking with the right lilt. In my day, it was more brands selling all this to kids. These days, the social signifiers kids are to wear, clothes and speech and so forth are sold by some vapid influencer on TikTok and Instagram. Now, high school everywhere is about fitting in to some degree, but not like it is in America. In America, fitting in means something very, very different. Conformity of an absolute and almost totalitarian kind. You're a sensitive, artistic soul. In Europe and Canada, there's by and large plenty of support for you. You want to explore theory and literature? Great. In much of the world, there's plenty ways to do it. But in America, your first and only job as a kid is fitting in, so you don't get beaten down. How do you do that? How do you fit in American school? Well, you have to live up to the consumerist ideal of what a kid is, the one sold to you by adults. So in my day, like I said, teenage girls would run off and buy Victoria's Secret, and the guys would parade their Abercrombie and Fitch. These days, kids laugh at that, but the cycle hasn't changed one iota. It's just a different brand or lilt or what have you. But all of that is only a superficial expression too. What is all the stuff really saying? What is the message the social signifier is sending? See how powerful I am. See how much better than you I am. I am the superior one. So this is all about supremacy. That is why I said American kids interact in profoundly weird, abnormal ways compared to anywhere in the rest of the world. Their every interaction is a competition for social superiority. Now, Americans think that it's true everywhere at high school is about this search for social superiority. It isn't. In much of the rest of the world, high school is what it should be, a search for identity, a period of self-discovery. If you don't fit in, that's okay. You will find your place because there are plenty of clubs and associations and groups and other kinds of support systems where you can find freaks just like you. But in America, that support is almost non-existent. Yes, schools have clubs and so forth, but they do not solve the cultural problem. Kids in the wrong clubs or with the wrong clothes or with the wrong attitudes and interests are still regarded with contempt and spite and hate, intense levels of contempt and spite and hate, which never really stop and turn into real violence. The contest for survival at school is real. It isn't a joke or a game. Why would it be? Or how could it be when, as we'll come back to, that's what American adults' life is too. Now, if you're American, you might think I'm exaggerating. Then let's consider some more facts. Depression and anxiety are soaring in American kids, reaching endemic levels. Worse, mental health care is harder to access in America than most other places, meaning that depression and anxiety are going untreated. Now, kids don't get depressed and anxious for no reason. Kids spend most of their day at school. That depression and anxiety are soaring to endemic levels, while school shootings have also become endemic. It's telling us something is going badly, badly wrong for America's kids. Let me crystallize now some of what I'm trying to say. I am not saying something simple and monocasual. Bullying produces school shootings. Sorry, let me start again. Let me crystallize now some of what I'm saying. I'm not saying something simple and monocasual. Bullying produces school shootings. Rather, I'm saying that American kids are being socialized into a culture of intense violence, brutality, individualism, greed, and selfishness, of extreme competition, of life as a blood sport. That is what high school is, a period of socialization into society's mores and norms. Only Americas are not normal ones, and kids feel it. They are growing more depressed and anxious because no kid should have to grow up in that kind of big society or little one, which is what school is. Let me try and shade that in. America's big society, the one grown-ups live in, what is that like? Well, it's a place of incredible violence that isn't even seen as violence. And this I thought was really profound with, you know, both my dad, my sister, my daughter being insulin dependent diabetics. You don't need a gun to kill someone. You can just deny them healthcare, insulin, life-saving medicine, which is what Americans do every single day to each other. Americans wake up, head off to jobs, compete with each other for tiny morsels of money and shelter and food. If you don't win this daily contest, you're left for dead. You lose your job, you could lose your apartment, your healthcare, everything. Nobody is really a friend in a society like that. Everyone is a rival, adversary, enemy, which is why American levels of trust have imploded to rock bottom, off the charts. Grown-up American life is a contest to the death, repeated over and over again every single day. So why would we expect American youth life to be any different? Even if kids want to be different, they're living in the societies and worlds adults make. And in America, unfortunately, the world adults have made is a hyper-competitive one, where if you don't have a requisite amount of money, power, productivity, stuff, you are not considered human at all. Nobody has intrinsic or inherent worth. Hence, there's no right to even basic healthcare like in Canada or Europe. Life itself has no value whatsoever in the Americas grown-ups have made. Dignity does not exist, only degradation does. You are always trying to clamber up the ladder by pulling someone else, even if it degrades you in the process. That is what most Americans' jobs are, finding ways to exploit someone more vulnerable than you. So if the world American grown-ups have made is about exploitation of the weak by the strong, about cruelty, brutality, and everyday violence so pervasive it isn't even seen as violence, why would the little worlds America's kids live in be any different? You know, exploitation of the weak by the strong, cruelty, brutality, that sums up Ken Kratz. That totally sums up Ken Kratz. He just couldn't care less what he's doing to other people, what he did to Steve. You know, Wiegert and Fassbender, you're the ones making this awful world. Now, again, Americans are going to have a hard time maybe understanding what I mean. So let me put it like this. In America, kids are not allowed to be kids. They are little adults. They are made to fight for existence and dignity and worth, just like grown-ups are, but never to have them intrinsically. You have to win a contest to have those things. Be pretty or athletic, or maybe in some place, be good at maths or science or what have you. But kids are not allowed to be kids. They are made to compete, aggress on each other, be hostile to each other, regard each other as adversaries and rivals for a limited amount of respect of just being seen at all. So if the world American grown-ups have made is about exploitation of the weak by the strong, about cruelty, brutality, and everyday violence, so pervasive it isn't even seen as violence, why would the little worlds American kids live in be any different? Now again, Americans are going to have a hard time maybe understanding what I mean. So let me put it like this. In America, kids are not allowed to be kids. They are little adults. They are made to fight for existence and dignity and worth. I think I've just, yes, that's the paragraph I've just read. But this thing just jumps about. Here we go. They are made to compete, aggress on each other, be hostile to each other, regard each other as adversaries and rivals for a limited amount of respect of just being seen at all. American pundits explain this away sometimes as a battle for places at good colleges. But that is not really what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about the way that American kids are socialized. High school is socialization into adult norms. American kids lose their innocence in high school. We all do, but they lose it hard and to an extreme. Suddenly, they have to confront the ugliness and obscenity of the world American adults have made, a place where nobody has decent healthcare, where nobody has intrinsic or inherent worth, where casual violence is perfectly acceptable in the form of me denying you the basics of life. I'll be a bit more careful about how I use that sidebar. What do kids do in that situation? Well, they have a choice. They can either begin to internalize the norms and roles adults have made for them, and therefore reproduce the adult world, coming of age as the next generation, learning that the world their parents have created was the right one, or they can try to rebel against it. But if you do that in America, you don't fit in. And because the norms you're told to absorb are ones of competitiveness and conformity and brutality to begin with, the price is steep. Hence, American kids, confronted with this impossible dilemma, learn your place in the dumb, mindless, cruel society grown-ups have made. Treat your peers, your fellow kids, the same way American grown-ups do, like worthless commodities, enemies, rivals, or else. Are growing more and more depressed and anxious. And some of that depression and anxiety explodes, it seems, in the form of lethal violence. Let me try to sum all that up. Kids are socialized into the worlds adults make. American kids are being socialized into a particular world, one where aggression, competition, individualism, greed, selfishness, contempt for others, nobody having any kind of intrinsic human worth or inalienable dignity, all those are norms. And the most aggressive, competitive, ruthless, selfish, greedy, and violent are the ones who win the power, money, and fame. Again, that just speaks of Ken Kraft and his ilk. That is the world American adults have made. It's the world they don't even know, it seems. They teach the kids to accept. That's why American high school really is. That's what American high school really is. What all high school is little worlds mirroring big ones to prepare the young for transition between the two. So is it any surprise that there are regular school shootings when high school in America is a little world just like the big one, where little people are beginning to be taught to act just like grown-ups? American grown-ups don't have any regard for each other either. They're quite happy to kill each other too, and it doesn't even take a gun. Just denying insulin or medicine or income or shelter or food. Grown-up American life is a contest to the death, and so is life for America's kids. The depression, the anxiety, the school shootings, they're all telling us something. Something is going badly, badly wrong for America's kids. They are not being taught to socialize, allowed maybe in normal, healthy ways. They are being forced into being little adults in little worlds that mirror the big world of American grown-ups. But that is an incredibly grotesque and ugly place. Only the strong survive and the weak perish. Money and power are all that matter. Greed and ruthlessness and brutality win. Little people are absorbing these values. They are being made to, and it is hurting them, scarring them for life when it isn't literally killing them. Maybe you see what I'm trying to say, maybe you don't. I don't blame you if you don't. I know that many, probably most, Americans will fight against what I have to say instinctively. And this is something I've been going on about for a long, long time. American exceptionalism. And as Omar says here, exceptionalism dies hard. They really are going to struggle to grasp all this. They won't get their little worlds. They won't get that little worlds mirror big ones. And if America's world for grown-ups is so violent, callous, brutal, and ugly, then, well, why would we expect its little worlds in high schools to be any different? When America's adults kill people, what do we say? Bad, don't do that. Jeff Bezos could single-handedly end COVID with a fraction of his fortune. 5 million people are dead and millions more are going to die. Zuck played a part in the disinformation campaign that helped start genocides. Kids aren't stupid. They can see mixed messages from a mile away. Hey, kids, violence is okay. This kind of cruelty and barbarity is okay. But that one, oh, that's the bad kind. Maybe you see my point. America's kids are socialized into a society that is off the charts with greed and ugliness and violence and ruin. You cannot expect their little worlds not to explode with all that too. The only real surprise is there aren't more shootings at school, even if the kids themselves are better than all this and ache for a different world, a more accepting and peaceful and graceful and decent one than the one Americans grown-ups have created for them and for themselves. So the cycle will go on. Sorry, kids, this is the big world the grown-ups wanted for you. And it begins with the little one you have to suffer through every day. Just know that some of us wanted a different one. So I'll leave the link to that particular article. Yeah, quite disturbing, isn't it? When I've read some of his other articles, very, very interesting. It is something that, you know, since February 2016, when I first watched Making a Murderer, watching in disbelief at the way that the system treated the sheriff's department, the attorneys, how they treated Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey, the family. You know, just incredible cruelty, ridiculous cruelty. So that they could preserve their world, their power. Anyway, as usual, you can let me know what you think in the comments below. I've met lots of Americans. I don't think that's what certainly the ones I've met, that is not the America that they want. They want change. They can see the need for change, and hopefully that change will come. One can't help thinking that, you know, when Steve and Brendan are freed, exonerated, compensated, that there will be this call for change. There will be some sort of truth reckoning, maybe even some reconciliation, and you know, people will say, you know, we've had enough of this. You know, you can't just treat people so badly as to just deliberately convict them. Anyway, that's all I got time for today. I've got to crack on, get these two hounds off for another walk before I start teaching. So we'll catch you all soon. Take care. Bye for now.